Fire it up.
It's an absolutely gorgeous day here in Frankfurt, so I thought I would do this from the balcony. I've got alcohol-free Hefeweizen that is just delicious when it's nice and warm like this. I've got the shade of the giant oak tree, and yeah, I hope you're nice and relaxed, and if not, you know, take a seat, pop open a can of Bud Light. Just kidding. Let's not even go there. And so here we go. This is going to be chapter 3. Her toes were naked and somehow pornographic. I don't know if you could see that. All right. I'll try to get this in one take. A nice idea. This is nothing less than a miracle, I exclaimed. The good Lord bestows a gift upon us, and all you've got is nice. I am unsure if I said that in German, but it would have come out as a jumbled mess if I had. But as I said, we were like instant buddies, and I don't know why, as I've also stated, but we got to talking. And I told her I was on my way to the Harley-Davidson shop to get a job. She asked if I was a mechanic, which made me feel good, because mechanics must have something going on upstairs and be good with their hands. I would do anything, I told her. Sell bikes or clothes, clean, learn by helping out the mechanics. It'd all be part of my research for the book I'm writing. A barely perceptible spasm went through her from toes to crown at the mention of writing a book. I wasn't trying to impress her by mentioning the book. It was more of a pep talk to myself. If I kept saying I was writing a book and told enough people I was working on it, I'd be forced to do it even if I wanted to bail out and move on to something else. I ain't especially fond of writing because it's a lonesome calling, or it can be when you get deep enough, when you've burrowed into the bowels of another world, and you get the slime and goo out of your eyes, and let's call it a uterus instead of bowels, a birth canal. And once you finally wipe the amniotic mess from your eyes, you find yourself on an empty stage. I'm standing in the middle of the stage, and my stage is always made out of the parquet floor of the former Boston Garden. And as I stand there, people begin to materialize, like the woman in the cafe that I'm now writing about, and they speak with me or tell me a story, or multiple people materialize, and I watch and rewatch their dramas and take notes as best I can. Other times I'm like Hamlet with Yorick's skull, but instead of a skull, I'll have a memento from someone I loved who has left that other world in which we all dwell. But let's stay with who's currently on stage, the woman with stars on her nose, blonde hair and green eyes that throw sparkles. She may have stolen them from an exotic animal. I don't know, does that work? I've got to do something about that. Let's go on. It would not be incorrect to picture her as beautiful, but please take note of her limp as the two of us exited the cafe. Her left leg must have had a stiffness to it that I failed to notice that morning, but I see it as I relive the scene on the stage. She'll end up having surgery on that leg a month later, but let's not spoil the here and now. The two of us, Beatrice and I, were standing in the parking lot, and she offered me a ride to the Harley-Davidson dealership when she found out I was walking. Usually, I would have declined the offer. When I have a plan, which is rare, I like to stick to it, especially if I have fooled myself into thinking it will lead me to a better me. Of course, I'm bullshitting about plans. If I stuck to plans, I would already be talking about Bosty's new garage in Long Beach, and also possibly, still a long shot though, I'd have a job working at the Harley shop. I got into Beatrice's car, and as soon as I buckled myself in, I said, "You know, I don't want to go to the Harley shop. That's not going to work for me. It was an idea I came up with while I was drunk, and that's usually when I have my best ideas, because the drunk me is adventurous and fearless, energetic, funny, dashing, and handsome, and that guy actually likes people. On the other hand, the sober me doesn't even like people for the most part. The sober me is also self-absorbed, so I'm easily offended." "Well, at least you're honest with yourself," said Beatrice. "Did you just wink at me?" I asked. She smiled and said, "Where shall I take you if you're not going to the Harley place?" "Yeah, what am I doing in your car? Where were you going to go?" "I don't want to impose. I'll just walk home and write. That's what I should be doing anyway," I said. Beatrice said she was taking a break from work and getting out of the home office for some fresh air and socialization. Beatrice told me she is an IT something or other doing something with databanks and back testing. I admired her hands as she talked about her job, and her mouth, her eyes. Hands, mouths, and eyes usually have my attention more than words. Through them is how I get to know a person. That is nothing special. We're animals that pretend we are different from other animals because we wear clothes and excuse ourselves when we belch. She drove me home. It was my first time riding in a Tesla. It was okay. The car got us to my place. I asked her if she was hungry, saying I could make lunch, and saw her going back and forth in her head. Her husband must have also been a part of that decision-making process, but I didn't know she was married then. I knew she wouldn't refuse because I was a man she hardly knew. No, that doesn't make sense. I knew she wouldn't refuse even though I was a man she hardly knew. For some reason, I sensed that she knew I was harmless. Yes, I am a male animal, but sometimes I am playful and generous. Magnanimous is the word that springs to mind. And I am that ideal we hold so high, human. Sometimes I am. Of course, the puppy dog, that's what I was then. One, because who would work rather than hang out with a puppy and eat a fabulous meal? What finally swayed her was when I told her I would be making a frittata. It's impossible to say no to a frittata. We climbed the stairs to my second-floor apartment. It would be a third-floor apartment in the U.S. Nearly every wooden step let out a tired groan. Beatrice commented on the shoe farm outside the door to my apartment. All 8 pairs of running shoes were neatly lined up on a double-decker shoe stand, each with at least a few hundred kilometers of flight, of gliding. I'm a slow runner, and I told her I became a runner because I had ghost-written a running book. There are method actors, so why shouldn't there be method writers? I opened the door and we stepped into the entryway, a good-sized vestibule with 6 doorways: front door, bedroom, living room, office/Frankfurter Bad, the toilet that is approximately 1.5 square meters, and the kitchen. As I bent down to remove my boots, I told Beatrice to keep her shoes on, or if she wanted to take them off, I had a pair of hotel slippers that were still in their plastic wrap that she could use. She got out of her Uggs while I was still trying to get off the first boot, and her 10 naked toes stared up at me from the glowing parquet. Parquet? God, I can never say that correctly. Light from the open doors held the entryway like a sandwich. I'm not a fan of toes. I'm not a fan of toes because they remind me that we're only a hop and step up from a chimp. But praise to Hermes and his winged sandals that must have required pedicures. And there wasn't nail polish back then, and Beatrice's toes weren't painted red in any of its shades, any of its hideous shades. A blue or green would have been okay. Pale, nearly translucent skin encased her feet, and the nails crowning her toes were naked and somehow pornographic. After finally getting off my boots, I slipped into my Hausschuhe, slippers, or Pantoffeln, as I call them, the word for slippers in Hessen, or is it Ostdeutschland? I don't remember. And my heels softly slapped the floor as I went to the shoe cabinet in the bedroom. I had at least a dozen pairs of sealed slippers from hotels around Europe. I chose a pair from a family-owned hotel in Taormina, Sicily, from a wardrobe and from a wardrobe drawer I got a pair of women's socks. Don't ask. She put on the socks and slippers at the kitchen table while I raided the fridge. 4 eggs would be enough for us. Zucchini, mushrooms, broccoli, baby spinach, and a piece of bell pepper. When you make meals for yourself, a whole bell pepper bullies and overpowers most dishes, unless you're making sausage and peppers, of course. I also got out cheddar and Parmesan, neatly placing everything on the counter next to the stove. Neatly. I took an onion and 2 cloves of garlic from the cabinet, which acts like a pantry. Beatrice asked how I keep my place so clean. It's a confluence of factors, I told her. For many years, I was the only child in a large Sicilian family in Destino, California. I had multiple mothers, from my great-grandmother to Nana to Mom, and you'd better throw a few aunts into the mix, too. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen because that was always the center of the household. My great-grandmother was always cooking something, and people would drop by and sit at the kitchen table and have coffee and cake or some Italian food, Italian cookies, always the best. So the place always had to be neat and clean, and you'll see as I'm cooking that I'm like an Italian grandmother. I'll slice and dice and fry and do many things at once while keeping the area clean and you entertained, or so I hope. But the whole apartment is so clean and organized, she said. As I said, it's a confluence of factors. I'm also a Virgo. And my tip to you is to use a cast iron pan if possible. It makes the best frittatas. I dropped zucchini slices into the hot pan and spread them out flat with a small wooden flipper. Then I went to work on dicing the onion. When you've had decades of practice and your knife is as sharp as a razor, it's a quick job. And I was soon on to the mushrooms, skinning the poor fellas alive. I asked Beatrice if she knew that mushrooms breathe like humans do. They take in oxygen and exhale it. And once again, they take in oxygen and exhale, if that's the word, carbon dioxide. Isn't that crazy? She looked like she was about to cry, so I quickly asked if she could turn over the zucchini while I broke up the broccoli with my hands. I don't use a knife on broccoli. I used the knife on the bell pepper, the little bit that was left. Here, use the wooden flipper and a fork if you need to. Just flip them, and then we'll throw in the broccoli, mushrooms, bits of bell pepper, onion, and I'll get to work on the garlic. A few minutes later, I bombed the pan with minced garlic and had her keep moving everything around as I beat the eggs like an abusive father who catches his son reading a book on motorcycling by the likes of moi. After Beatrice spread everything evenly on the pan, I turned off the burner but kept the pan on it and poured the eggs over. I was relieved that I had remembered to turn on the oven. I handed Beatrice 4 or 5 thin slices of cheddar to throw on top. Then I had her dust the top of the creation with a... Dust the top of the creation? I don't think dust is the correct word, but that's what I wrote. Then I had her dust the top of the creation with grated Parmesan, admiring her hands again and marveling at how nature creates such beauty. And this is what was going through my head as I waited to put the pan in the oven. And the same goes for her feet. I was thinking of beauty. And the sweat they produce for the foot fetishists in all of us, even if we reject that we smell. And I wish I hadn't had seen her piggies had been ensconced in Uggs, but at least she was wearing them correctly without socks. And I had a pair of Uggs way back when during a stint at a big house of higher education in the Midwest when Uggs were still made in Australia, or at least I believe they were. And some Uggs still made in Australia? Are some Harley-Davidson parts produced in China? That would be such a shame. I made a pot of pour-over coffee as the frittata cooked in the oven. Okay. Wow. I don't know. How was that? Was that okay? I hope I read it okay. Wow. And I started right before it's getting loud down there. All right. Have yourself a great week. I hope you're enjoying a beer, and I hope it's summer where you are. Take care. Bye-bye.